立法會主席
The President. Questions. Question 1, Ms. Carmen. Thank you, President. The LCSD Leisure and Cultural Services Department's Intelligent Sports and Recreation Services Booking and Information System SmartPLAY, which was developed at a cost of $500 million, was launched in 2023. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, of the number of complaints it has received and investigated since the launch of SmartPLAY in relation to hirers profiting from touting their booked sessions for use of recreation and sports facilities? Among these cases, of the respective numbers of those being punished according to LCSD's penalties, prosecuted according to the law and convicted, whether it has examined the effectiveness of SmartPLAY in combating touting activities, including whether its anti-bot solution can effectively block plug-in programs from snatching booking sessions. 2. As some members of the public have reflected that the e-payment method for LCSD venues allows non-hirers to pay venue hire charges, making it possible for touting agents to book the venues on others' behalf, whether there are any countermeasures in place, if so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. Apart from the fact that minors may have their parents book recreation and sports facilities on their behalf, whether there are any other exceptional circumstances where third-party bookings are permitted. And 3, as there are views that the current approach to allocation of venues, for example, grass soccer pitches, by ballot is more effective than first-come, first-served approach in combating touting activities, whether the authorities will consider allocating all recreational and sports facilities by ballot, and so of the details, if not the reasons for that. Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism. President, the LCSD launched a brand new intelligent sports and recreation services booking information system named SmartPLAY in November 2023 to replace the old Leisure Link computer booking system. SmartPLAY is an integrated one-stop electronic service platform designed to facilitate the public in searching for and booking the sports and recreation facilities of LCSD, as well as enrolling in various kinds of sports and recreation activities or competitions through the internet or mobile app. At present, SmartPLAY has 1.07 million registered users with 28,000 daily booking transactions on average. My reply to Ms. Carmen's question is set up below. 1. The LCSD has always paid close attention to unauthorized transfer or touting activities in relation to sports and recreation facilities and adopted a multi-pronged approach to combat touting activities, including enhancing the booking system on an ongoing basis, imposing penalty arrangements, and stepping up inspections. At present, SmartPLAY includes the following functions to combat touting activities. 1. Adopting real name registration. 2. Allocating popular sports and recreational facilities by ballot in addition to the first-come, first-served allocation mechanism. 3. Requiring hirers to declare and undertake that they will be present during the use of relevant facilities and that the user permit will not be transferred by any means when booking and signing for facilities via the SmartPLAY system. Offenders may have committed an offense of fraud under the Theft Ordinance Chapter 210 and be liable to imprisonment of up to 14 years upon conviction. And 4. Imposing restrictions to prohibit the booking of overlapping sessions of fee charging or non-fee charging sports and recreation facilities. In addition to enhancing the SmartPLAY system, the LCSD closely monitors information on touting and inspects venues from time to time, including conducting surprise inspections and requiring hirers to present ID to facilitate investigation and follow up immediately as necessary. If a hirer is not present during the book session, it will be counted as a breach. A hirer who has accumulated 2 breaches within 60 days will result in a 90-day ban on booking facilities under the LCSD. Since the commissioning of SmartPLAY until May 2025, the LCSD has conducted over 890,000 random inspections, with more than 13,000 hirers being penalized for breaches. That is being suspended from booking LCSD fee charging sports and recreation facilities for 90 days. Between November 2023 to May this year, the LCSD received a total of 435 complaints relating to touting. Upon investigation, the LCSD imposed penalties for 50 cases of breaches. The LCSD will continue to monitor the situation and consider imposing heavier penalties on repeated offenders. Furthermore, the LCSC launched a joint operation with law enforcement agencies in July 2024 at tennis courts in Wenchai District to combat touting and other illegal activities. Several individuals were arrested successfully. Some of the individuals had been prosecuted and convicted and were sentenced to imprisonment of 4 months and 6 months respectively. Other cases are still under trial or being processed. To effectively combat the abuse of computer programs for booking sports and recreation facilities, a new generation of web application, firewall, and anti-bot technology have been introduced in SmartPLAY to closely monitor users' login activities. SmartPLAY also employs AI to oversee users' behavior and network usage for auto-defense, ensuring smooth operation of the system. When AI detects any abnormal operations such as unusual login, the system will automatically intercept suspicious access. Moreover, the LCSC, in collaboration with the contractor, has been closely monitoring the operation of the system and adjusting its settings from time to time. More than 5 million login attempts by suspected bots were intercepted by the system during peak periods in early 2025. The LCSD and the contractor will continue to follow up and actively explore more solutions to prevent bot booking of sports and recreation facilities, thereby enhancing the booking experience of normal users. 2. SmartPLAY is a one-stop electronic service platform that requires real name registration and enables the public to inquire about LCSD sports and recreation facilities and make bookings anytime via the internet or mobile app with e-payment options. Owing to various circumstances such as a lack of e-payment tools or insufficient balances therein, individual users may not be able to use e-payment when booking facilities and require the assistance of others who are not high risk to make the payment and complete the process. Besides, parents of minors aged under 18 may need to help their children's accounts for booking and payment. Therefore, SmartPLAY does not require the hirer and the payer to be the same person. That said, real name registration of the hirer is required and the hirer must personally check in and be present to use the facilities. 3. Currently, the LCSD allocates its sports and recreation facilities using two methods, namely on a first-come, first-served basis and through balloting. To facilitate members of the public in planning their exercise schedules, SmartPLAY allows users to make 7-day advance bookings or on-the-spot hires of most of the sports and recreation facilities on a first-come, first-served basis. As for balloting, although it is a fair mechanism, it requires users to make advanced planning by submitting balloting applications within 14 to 20 days before the usage date. Applicants must also pay attention to the balloting results and payment deadlines. Since both allocation methods have their own merits and drawbacks, the LCSC has conducted a questionnaire survey to collect public views on the mechanisms for booking and allocating various sports and recreation facilities under its purview. After considering the feedback from different users as well as reviewing the actual usage carefully, the LCSC currently only allocates sessions of popular turf soccer pitches by balloting, while other facilities continue to be allocated on a first-come, first-served basis. The LCSD will continue to pay close attention to the situation and review relevant booking arrangements. Thank you, President. Ms. Carmen Khan. The development cost of the system is $500 million, and the recurrent expenditure is $64 million. $66.4 million. But with these mechanisms, it is reflected that one cannot book the peak hours of these facilities unless they go through touts. And it is said that we have now many payment items available via touting because of the celebratory occasion. So I want to ask if the government will regularize balloting arrangements or expand the scope of balloting mechanisms so that more popular facilities will be allocated via balloting to better combat touting activities and those profiting from such activities. Thank you. Secretary. Regardless of the mechanisms, actually both mechanisms would have pros and cons. With our current arrangement, we have had reference to feedback, and in previous years we have conducted surveys. It is with reference to survey feedback that we have the current arrangements. We will continue to review feedback from the public. If it is considered balloting to be the more appropriate arrangement, we are more than willing to do that. And in accordance with the previous survey feedback, we have been allocating soccer pitches by balloting. Thank you, Mr. Vincent Ching. I have got some figures via the Finance Committee discussions. I note that for SmartPLAY, we have over 740,000 random inspections made, and according to your reply, we have over 890,000 random inspections made, and more than 13,000 hirers being penalized for breaches. That is quite a lot. We have also 140,000 of those who have not been present at facilities or have not actually collected the sessions, so to speak. So, are there any penalties for such activities in order to better combat non-usage of such facilities or misusage of such facilities? Secretary, we will continue to monitor the situation. If we have more people being penalized by breaches or repeated offenders, we will have more stringent measures. We are considering the more stringent measures to be implemented. Thank you. Ms. Nixie LAM. Thank you, President. We have many bot programs that will queue for SmartPLAY, and we have some touts that can input in advance many members' information. So when they log in once, they can enter information for multiple accounts, which is why it's difficult for normal users to queue for the system. Can we do anything to plug these loopholes? Thank you, Secretary. As we said in the main reply, early 2025, we have blocked over 5 million login attempts by suspected bots. And we have the LCSC and the contractor constantly reviewing the settings of the system and adjusting them if necessary. This is to prevent bots from making bookings. I also urge members of the public not to purchase these booking services of touts because SmartPLAY collects much personal information. It is unwise for users to disclose personal information to the touts. And according to our terms, such information should not be disclosed to others anyway by users. And one should not provide false information for bookings. And we have actually got feedback from members of the public saying that they are unable to actually take part in the bookings made by touts. So we urge members of the public not to make use of such services. Thank you. Mr. Kenneth Leung. It is often heard that for touting activities, they would make bookings in the name of organization or groups because they can make bookings early on. So how can we combat these activities that would exploit such loophole? Thank you. Secretary, we have all along been monitoring closely bookings made in groups names so that we make sure the bookings are actually utilized. Otherwise, there will be penalties. We will also continue to closely monitor the situation so that these group concessions will not be exploited. Thank you, President. Mr. Adrian Ho. Thank you, President. The second part of the reply said that one must be present and personally check in to use the facilities. But it is said that for soccer pitches, there will need to be 4 signatures done. and there should be at least 3 people present. Right now, SmartPLAY, if we can have 1 person sign or 3 pitches, or we can have someone sign in one venue and then check in another venue. It seems that there is no mechanism that would block this. And in the end, this loophole is exploited and resources wasted. How can we prevent this from happening? Thank you. Secretary, thank you for telling us about the situation. We will check if there is abuse of the sort. If there is such abuse, we will be more stringent. Thank you. Mr. Ken Falk, as Ms. Nixie LAM said, we have some bot programs, and apparently they have passed some tests so that they will not be detected as bots. And I have logged on to SmartPLAY at approximately 7 in the morning today, and there were 10,000 odd accounts queuing, and the queue has cleared very soon, so I think many of them are bots. The government has to do something about this. Technology advances at an astronomical pace. The development cost is quite high for the SmartPLAY system, $5 million. Has the government earmarked resources for the system to be updated to match the pace of developments of technology? We have the City Line system being used for many years, and you can see the system is quite outdated. So how can we make sure the SmartPLAY system is updated when necessary? Thank you. We have the recurrent expenditure for operations being $56 million. And for the first year, we only needed $28 million. But in future, it will be $56 million annually. And that would include software, hardware support, and services support. That would also include upgrades, potential upgrades to the system if necessary. The LCSD may deploy more resources to update the system to meet the different challenges ahead. Thank you. Mr. Dominic Lee, for those age under 18, if bookings have to be made, parents would have to make the bookings for them. This has caused some issues. My son in general would play squash, and coaches would be able to book 2 hours max. Otherwise, parents would have to make the bookings, and I was asked to make a booking. It was Wednesday afternoon, and I have council meeting to attend, right? So I can't really be there to sign in for the booking. So apparently, a contact can be used with the sign in. So is it possible that we can use some sort of QR code or other arrangements so that as long as we can prove the parent-child relationship, a parent can sign in electronically for a booking made by them on behalf of their children? Thank you, Secretary. Well, children can open their own accounts at the moment, and they can sign in for the facilities themselves. They do not need to be accompanied by their parents. But we also allow those under 18 having their accounts managed by their parents. For those under 18, they can register their own personal accounts, essentially. Thank you. Mr. Chan Pu-leung, there has been feedback saying that some can pay for the hirers for the bookings. It is a problem. And it is said that some lack e-payment tools or have insufficient balances. Therefore, non-hirers can make the payment and complete the process. Have you conducted any surveys? How many instances are there where there are different people making the booking and making the payment. If you have the relevant figures, I think you can better gauge whether there are potential touting activities and do something about it. Thank you. Secretary, I do not have the relevant figures on hand, but I think the system is monitoring the situation and such data can be analyzed if necessary. We will keep in close view of the situation. If necessary, we can put in place more stringent measures. Mr. Yim Kong, Eric Yim. Thank you, President. In order to resolve the issue of supply-demand imbalance, we need to be innovative. We need to have more sports and recreation facilities. Shenzhen, they have a professional organization coordinating schools' hire of venues. So with those who have Shenzhen residence permit, Hong Kongers can book sports and recreation facilities through the organization. So should we start doing this? Maybe we can start with government schools so that we can resolve the issue of imbalance of demand and supply and provide better convenience. Secretary, we have great demand of cultural, sports, and recreation facilities at the moment, which is why we have been working with schools through the Education Bureau to open up the facilities for use by organizations. We have also provided subsidies to schools for support with the relevant schemes. We have many schools participating in the schemes to open up their venues and facilities. But of course, we want to encourage greater degree of participation, but that may take time. So that once we have seen good results, more schools will follow.
Question 2, Ms. Nixie LAM. Under the Inland Revenue Ordinance, all eligible child allowances for married couples residing together can only be claimed by one of them, and they must decide on their own who should make the claims. There are views that such arrangement may give rise to disputes within the family. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. Given that modern married couples usually share the responsibility of taking care of their children, both financially and in terms of care, of the reasons why child allowances can only be claimed by one of them at present. 2. Whether it has studied amending the legislation to stipulate that married couples with children may allocate child allowances equally or claim child allowances separately. If so, the specific plan and timetable, including whether it will consider introducing a default allocation mechanism, such as allowing a choice of equal allocation of allowances or automatic allocation of allowances according to the ratio of the married couple's income, empowering the Inland Revenue Department to make rulings or setting clear criteria on the priority of making claims. If it has not studied amending the legislation, of the reasons for that. And 3, whether in the absence of legislative amendments at present, the government will consider drawing up a set of reference guidelines on child allowances. For example, the order of claims may be handled according to the ratio of family incomes, major child-bearing rules or previous claiming practices, etc., as well as stepping up public education so as to assist families in making proper arrangements for claiming allowances, if so, of the specific plan and timetable, if not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. President, according to Section 31 of the Inland Revenue Ordinance, Cap 112, hereinafter referred to as the Ordinance, a taxpayer for salary tax may claim child allowance for a year of assessment if he or she maintains an unmarried child who is under 18 years old, of or over 18 but under 25 years old, and receiving full-time education and an educational institution, or of or over 18 years old and is, because of physical or mental disability, unable to work in that year of assessment. A taxpayer may claim child allowance for up to 9 children. Starting from the year of assessment 2023-24, the allowance for each child is $130,000. An additional allowance of $130,000 is granted for a newborn child during the year of assessment of the child's birth. My reply to parts 1 to 3 of Ms. Nixie LAM's questions is as follows. 1 and 2. According to Section 31(3) of the Ordinance, unless a taxpayer and his or her spouse are living apart, all child allowances must be claimed en bloc by either the taxpayer or their spouse. Taxpayers and their spouse should jointly decide who will claim all the child allowances. This requirement was included in the ordinance in 1989, when married persons started to be allowed to elect separate taxation or joint assessment with their spouse, and has been enforced until today. The main considerations are as follows. Before the year of assessment 2003 and 04, the amount of child allowance was determined by the number of children claimed on a regressive basis. Starting from the year of assessment 2003 and 4, the first to the ninth child are granted with a uniform allowance. Nevertheless, the prevailing mechanism already provides sufficient options and flexibility to reduce the tax burden on married persons, and more than 60% of taxpayers claiming child allowances claim for only one child. We therefore consider that there was no need to abolish the requirement that only a taxpayer or their spouse can claim child allowance. Currently, married persons may elect separate taxation or joint assessment with their spouse for tax savings. Having all child allowances claimed by one party or allowing both parties to separately claim allowances for individual child or children does not affect the total amount of tax payable under joint assessment. Under the current arrangement, even if married persons and their spouse do not elect joint assessment on their own initiative, the Inland Revenue Department, IRD, would still compare their tax payable under separate taxation and joint assessment. If the joint assessment is found to be more beneficial to them, IRD would invite them to elect joint assessment. In addition, the ordinance does not require that allowance in respect of the same child must always be claimed by the same claimant. If taxpayers and their spouse choose separate taxation, they may discuss in advance on how to claim the child allowance and flexibly arrange to claim the child allowance for different years of assessment, such as taking turns to claim in different years to meet the needs of individual families. We find the current mechanism effective in reducing the tax burden on married persons and providing taxpayers with a flexible and convenient tax filing process, allowing them to make appropriate tax arrangements according to their family situations. There is no need to allow taxpayers and their spouse to separately claim child allowances. Currently, the IRD only apportions the child allowance based on actual circumstances for living apart or divorced cases. This arrangement helps reduce the compliance burden on taxpayers and ensure IRD's efficiency of tax assessment. On the other hand, as the specific circumstances and needs of each family vary, taxpayers and their spouse may have different financial and tax arrangements. We have no plans to change the current practice of IRD generally not intervening in family matters to introduce a default allocation mechanism, as it is unlikely to meet the needs of all families. The government will continue to review the claim arrangements and levels of various allowances from time to time and consider whether there is room for enhancement based on various factors such as the number of beneficiaries, the government financial situation, and administrative efficiency. 3. IRD currently provides frequently asked questions and guidelines on child allowances on its website. Generally speaking, it is more beneficial for the party with higher income to claim child allowance. However, if one party is assessed at standard rates, it would be more beneficial for the other party who is not assessed at standard rates to claim the allowance. The website also features a tax calculator, allowing taxpayers and their spouses to input their respective income amounts, deductions, and different allowance distribution scenarios to make the most appropriate claim arrangements. Besides, after issuing individual tax returns in May of each year, IRD will extend the service hours of telephone inquiry to answer questions from taxpayers about completing their tax returns. Thank you, President. Ms. Nixie LAM. I wonder if the government officials who drafted the main reply is a taxpayer. The administration said that their mechanism is efficient, but I think that's not favorable for taxpayers. Now, in terms of parent allowance, we recognize the contributions of the children, but that's not the case for parents. There are 75% of families who both parents work. However, only one spouse or one parent can claim child allowance. And apportionment of tax allowance is only possible for living apart or divorced cases. I wonder if the administration will rectify the problem and improve the mechanism. We just want the administration to give our families and parents one more option. Secretary. President, as mentioned in our main reply, we will continue to review the claim arrangements made by our taxpayers from time to time. Today, we're talking about the requirements for claims and the relevant arrangements. There were two questions asked, whether we should allow the parents to claim child allowances together or allowing only one of them to claim. We will consider factors such as the number of beneficiaries, the government's financial situation, and whether the taxpayers have to provide additional information, thus enhancing their compliance burdens. We also have to ensure the IRD's efficiency of tax assessment. If we have any suspicion, we have to collect the tax returns of both parents and verify the information before we can issue our tax demand note. This will increase the burden of taxpayers and affect the tax assessment procedures. As mentioned, we will keep in view the relevant government administrative efficiency and various levels of tax allowance. Mr. Tommy Chang, the administration said that the mechanism is efficient and effective. That was when we encourage parents to only have 2 children. However, we have an aging population and the fertility rate is declining. We encourage childbearing. I told the Chief Executive and Financial Secretary that we should increase the child allowance to $150,000 for each. For the first child, $300,000 for the third child, and $600,000 for children after that. Secretary. We thank the electrical members and various political parties for giving us their suggestions and views on our tax mechanism and arrangements. We will consider all of their suggestions on tax allowances. When the administration prepare for our policy address, we will have regards to the demand of the people, the economic situation, and our fiscal position. Mr. Lee Cheng-kang. Thank you, President. The administration said that the IRD provides frequently asked questions and guidelines on its website. As the I Am Smart application and the technology is becoming more prevalent, should we streamline our tax filing procedures? Can the IRD tell us how they are promoting digitalization of tax filing and encourage more taxpayers to file their taxes electronically? Secretary. Thank you. The IRD strives to digitalize our tax filing process and to enhance the reliability, accuracy, and efficiency of tax assessment and filing. Starting from July 2025, under the e-tax, we're going to create 3 websites on individual, business, tax filings, and representative tax filings. We're going to redesign our e-tax website, and we're also going to roll out a mobile application. The IRD has established a KPI that is from 2023, and 2026, 27. The number of taxpayers filing tax return digitally should increase by 5% each year. According to our statistics, in the 3 financial years starting from 2022 to 2025, the rate of increase is 9%, and that has met our KPI. In year 2024-25, 40% of taxpayers file their taxes electronically. We continue to conduct more publicity campaigns and to encourage more taxpayers to file their taxes digitally. Mr. Edmund Wong. The administration said that the taxpayers can choose joint assessments or take turns to claim in different years child allowance to lower the burden. Each parent wants to claim the child allowance. The administration said that 60% of taxpayers are claiming only child allowance for one child. In other words, 40% of taxpayers claim child allowances for more than one. Singapore, either the mother or father can choose to claim for the child allowance, and they can also choose to have joint assessment. More than 40% of taxpayers are filing their tax return electronically. I believe that the administrative burden on the government has been lowered. I believe that the system will automatically reject any filing of child allowance of both parents. Apart from giving newborn baby bonus of $20,000, will the administration allow the parents to jointly claim child allowance? Secretary, in terms of the number of beneficiaries, even if both parties or both parents choose to separately claim allowances for individual child or children, it does not affect the total amount of taxpayer under joint assessment. As I mentioned, more than 60% of taxpayers are only claiming child allowance for only one child. For married couples who claim child allowances jointly or separately, the total amount of tax to be paid will remain the same. We will have to look at the deductibles and other allowance as well as income of the relevant parties before we can decide on whether it's more beneficial for either party to claim child allowance. If we suspect that parents claim for child allowance for one child repeatedly or in duplication, we will have to verify the information, and that undermines actually our efficiency of tax assessment and increase the tax compliance burden on taxpayers. We have to have regards to the number of beneficiaries, the policy goals, and the administrative efficiency before we see if there is any room for enhancement. As I mentioned, we are going to continue to keep in view the claim levels and various allowances from time to time. Currently, the basic child allowance is set as $130,000 per year. But as we all know, many parents spend a lot of money on, say, extracurricular activities for their children. The administration said that they will review the levels of claim and allowances from time to time. Will the administration have regards to the inflation rate of our community or the cost of child rearing before they adjust the child allowance level? Secretary. Thank you, President. Whenever we assess our tax policy, we have regards to various considerations such as the internal and external economic situations, the government fiscal position, along with other indicators such as inflation rate. When we prepare for our budget, the administration would consider different factors. We also take this opportunity to review our existing mechanism and tax level to meet the demand of the community at the time. Mr. Chairman Kwon. Thank you. There are different types of child allowances. We have rent deductions, mortgage interest allowance, parents allowance. Couples can choose to go for joint assessment or separate taxation. Also, parents are eligible for additional allowance of $130,000 for a newborn child during the year of assessment of the child's birth. On top of the newborn baby bonus, should we extend the additional allowance to, say, first 3 years when the newborn was born? The standard rate, if we take it 70%, then for each year, the parents will only enjoy a tax deductions of $22,000 a year. Will the administration consider this? Secretary. Thank you, President. In the year of assessment 2023-24, the child allowance and the additional allowance for newborn child has been increased to $130,000. The government does not only rely on our tax policies to encourage childbearing. We have other measures in place. As I mentioned, when we prepare for the budget, we have regards to the economy and the fiscal position of the government before we review our tax policies. Ms. Nixie LAM. Thank you, President. As many members have said, the cost of child rearing has been increasing. Will the administration create, say, additional child allowances for children with special needs? Say, for example, for children that needs additional education costs, such as those with SEN, should we allow those parents to claim additional allowances? Secretary, thank you. Many members have given us their views on the relevant claim arrangements and allowance level. We will take the opportunity when we prepare the budget to review our policies. Apart from child allowance, we will look into whether there are other ways for us to alleviate the tax burden of the people. In the year of assessment 2024-25, if the taxpayers live with their children for no less than 6 months in a year, and if the child is born after 25th of October 2023 and is aged below 18, then the relevant taxpayer will enjoy an higher ceiling of mortgage interest and rental allowance to $120,000. They will enjoy the relevant tax allowance or deductions for 19 years. We have different policies and measures to alleviate the tax burdens of parents, and we will continue to encourage childbearing. Thank you.
Question 3, Dr. Tik Chi-yuen. Thank you, President. In relation to the prevention of elderly suicide, will the government inform this council, 1, whether it has compiled detailed statistics on elderly suicide over the past 5 years, including but not limited to the annual number of cases, the comparison of suicide rate between persons aged above 60 and other age groups, the gender, age and geographical distribution of elderly persons committing suicide, and the proportion of cases involving mental health issues. Whether it has conducted in-depth study on the issue of elderly suicide in Hong Kong, if so, of the main triggering factors and their respective proportions, as well as the characteristics of high-risk groups, if not, the reasons for that. 2. What specific measures are in place relating to the mental health of the elderly and the prevention of elderly suicide, particularly tailor-made support measures for high-risk elderly persons and the allocation of resources, whether it has assessed the effectiveness of such measures, if so, of the details, and 3. Given that members of the social welfare sector have suggested that the government should establish a register of high-risk singleton or elderly couple, whether the government will consider this suggestion, if so, of the details, including the frequency of updating the register and support provided to people on the register, and whether government will share data with, among others, the hospital authority and NGOs to enable collaboration in supporting the elderly persons concerned. Secretary for Labour and Welfare. President, elderly suicide is a multifactorial issue with no single main cause, such as emotional problems, health and family relationships. In consultation with the Health Bureau HB, Hospital Authority HA, and the Department of Health DH and the Social Welfare Department SWD, my reply is as follows. The Coroner's Ordinance CAP 504 sets out 20 categories of reportable deaths, including suicide. Statistics relating to elderly suicide from 2020 to 2024 are at Annex. Figures show that the number of suicide deaths of persons aged 60 or above has remained by and large steady in recent years, with a slight drop in the proportion of all cases. While the government has not conducted any specific study on the subject of elderly suicide in recent years, it attaches great importance to the mental health of the elderly and has rolled out measures to improve the psychological health of the elderly and prevent elderly suicide. For instance, DH's elderly health centers provide health assessment for their members, including early detection and prevention through the use of an internationally recognized screening tool for local elderly people that targets symptoms of depression, including suicidal ideation. Healthcare professionals of the centers will refer cases with depression and suicidal risk to the A&E departments for immediate handling. In addition, the HA has implemented the Elderly Suicide Prevention Program ESPP since 2002 to provide timely psychiatric diagnosis and treatment for those suspected to have suicidal tendency, with a view to reducing the suicidal risk of the elderly concerned. Under the program, an elderly person assessed to have suicidal risk by doctors or social workers will be referred to the HA's psychiatric services for early follow-up, diagnosis, and suitable treatment. In addition, the HA and the SWD, through medical social collaboration of 7 HA clusters and 41 district elderly community centers, implemented dementia community support scheme to enhance healthcare support at the community level. Elderly persons with mild or moderate dementia are provided with support services in the community to stabilize their conditions and alleviate their stress from hospital visits. Their carers also receive support. The government's 18111 mental health support hotline offers one-stop round-the-clock support, including immediate mental health support and referral services for those with mental health needs, including the elderly. On the other hand, the SWD identifies and supports elderly persons with emotional distress and/or suicidal risk through a wide range of services. On mainstream services, there are 214 subvented elderly centers in Hong Kong providing services such as visits, emotional support, and counseling for the elderly and their carers. The 65 integrated family service centers and 2 integrated service centers provide preventive, supportive, and remedial services to families in need. The 58 medical social services units in hospitals and clinics also offer counseling and support services, where social workers will assess the suicidal risk of the service recipients. Besides, the SWD provides subvention to commission NGOs to operate 24 integrated community centers for mental wellness with one-stop district-based community support services ranging from prevention to crisis management. In terms of specialized services, the SWD has been subventing the Samaritan Befrienders Hong Kong to operate the Suicide Crisis Intervention Center, providing outreaching, crisis intervention, and intensive counseling services for people with moderate or high suicide risk. Apart from that, the NGO Suicide Prevention Services, with funding support from the Jockey Club Charities Trust, has launched the Outreach Befriending Service for suicidal elderly since 2006 to identify early elderly persons suffering from emotional disturbances or with suicidal risk through outreaching. Furthermore, dedicated hotline services are operated by the SWD and subvented NGOs to help persons in emotional distress, including those with suicidal tendency. Such services encourage and refer the clients to relevant service units to receive in-depth counseling services that suit their needs. There are professional social workers under the designated hotline for carer support 182183, providing round-the-clock immediate consultation and counseling, outreaching, emergency support, and referral services for those in need. The 2024 policy address announced the government is exploring the setting up of an inter-organization database on carers of elderly persons and PWDs. The government is studying the integration of data related to welfare services across different departments with a view to build a platform to provide collaboration as well as service innovation to enhance efficiency through sharing and analysis of data. The aim is to identify and encourage high-risk cases to receive support, intervene immediately in cases where there is a heightened risk, strengthen mechanism for collaboration, develop support programs, optimize allocation of resources. It will initially include information on carers of elderly persons and low-income carers from the SWD care teams and housing department. The purpose of the data are collected for different reasons, and not necessarily provision of social welfare support. The government is discussing with the Office of the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data and other departments on the design of the solutions with a view to launch the program in compliance with the requirements under the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance. Dr. TIK Chi-yuen. In a main reply, the Secretary said that the number of suicide involving elderly persons has remained steady in recent years. But it remains high, about 400 a year. One is too many. So there is a steady number of 400 a year. The problem is serious. The government said that they attach importance to this issue. I asked if there is any further study, but there is none. The Secretary has named a number of services. We all know that. If these services form a very secure safety net, the number should drop. Now it shows that, there is something that needs to be done. The government said that in 2024 policy address, there is a mention that a carer database will be set up. We are going to have the 2025 policy address. So this proposal is still on the drawing board. We have not yet seen any signs of the database. My question is there a timetable for this database? When will the database be used to provide further protection on our elderly persons? I think you have already asked your questions, Secretary. There are mainly 2 questions. First, the number of elderly suicide cases. In the past 5 years, as we all see that suicide cases involving those above the age of 65 hovers around 400. We want to prevent every single one of them. There are many factors in play in a suicide case The same goes for elderly suicide cases. If you say that there is not any effective service provided by the different organizations and departments, that is not true. Yes, the number stays at about 400, while the population of elderly people increase by tens of thousands every year. If the base figure expands, whereas the number stays the same, it is, in a way, a demonstration that our work is effective. Of course, we're not going to be complacent. In relation to the formulation of a database, we are determined to do it. We have more or less worked out the details with the Office of the Privacy Commissioner to enable comparison and sharing of information. We have to do it step by step in a prudent way. We want to do it speedily and carefully. The database will not be formed overnight. It takes time to be formed. The database is dynamic. A family that may be assessed as high risk will not always stay as high risk. Let me give you an example. When there is an elderly couple, there may not be any high risk, but if one gets hurt or, say, for example, becomes ill, then the risk increases. This database is dynamic. We want to make use of this database so that we can identify high-risk cases in order to prevent any unfortunate incidents. Mr. Tan Ka-biu. What question hasn't been answered? It's a simple question. Is there a timetable for the database? Secretary. We want to be able to launch the pilot scheme within this year. Mr. Tan Ka-biu. I thank the Secretary for attending an event last week. It is organized by an organization and the FTU. I can see that the team is working very hard on formulating a dynamic database. I just heard that the Secretary will launch the pilot scheme within this year. Please start with Kowloon East. We have the highest elderly population in Kwun Tong. The ratio of elderly persons in the community is the highest, is also high in Wong Tai Sin. So please start with Kowloon East. I will give you my full support. There are elderly people in every one of the 18 districts. Everyone thinks that their district is the most important. We care about every single elderly person. The most important thing is to start it first. Mr. Rock Chen. Just now in the Secretary's reply, he said in compliance with the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance, they will launch a pilot scheme to enable data sharing and analysis. Well, there is data received from the assistant call service. Can they use the data, say for example, the frequency of calls made, the age distribution, to enable big data analysis so that they can identify high-risk elderly persons? And they can use the data to work out quantifiable, accessible indicators as well. I think we need to see this from two perspectives. First, the big data from the SWD. 3 out of 4 elderly people are receiving different kinds of subsidy. The other sets are from the HA and the third set from the housing department. They are all important sets of data. We can collate the data to see the changes in the families. But there are also some other sets. Say for example, data from the emergency link service. I know that from the CLP as well as Town Gas, they have used smart service for their tariff meters. They can also supply us with data, but they are 2 different levels and 2 different sets of data. We'll use both well. Mr. Lai Tong Kwok, I would like to follow up on the follow-up question of Dr. Tik. In the third paragraph of the main reply, the government said that they attach importance to the mental health of the elderly. Of course, you will follow up immediately when there are problems. However, in the same breath, you said that you have not conducted any specific study on this subject. My understanding is that this is not consistent. In your reply, you've given us some figures. You said that annually, according to coroner's figures, there are about 500 cases. Those relating to mental health, a dozen or so, a small number. Male, the number is higher than that of females. Those above the age of 70 is higher than those between 60 and 69. The Secretary said there are difficulties because of privacy issues. I want to ask, the person has already passed away. Is there still privacy issues concerned? This is a serious subject. Why can't we conduct a specific study? Secretary, I thank the member for the question. In my main reply, indeed, I said that in recent years, the government has not conducted any specific study on the subject of elderly suicide. But it doesn't mean that the government does not attach importance on this subject. I have spent a lot of ink on this issue in my main reply. The DH, SWD, NGOs, they have been doing a lot of work on different levels. But it's not usually the case that when we only talk about elderly suicide, this subject involves many different factors, say for example, mental health or family relationship. We should spend more efforts on the various risks. When we find the right platform, of course, we will aim to gather more information so that we can do our preventive work better. Ms. Lillian Kwok. We're shocked by the numbers. We hear about elderly suicide cases every day. We don't know how many of them are living on their own or with an elderly partner. The Secretary said that there has not been any specific study done on this subject. A doctor in an interview said that mental health is an issue for the whole society. There are 2 tiers and 3 tier 2 level mechanism in place. So will there be a study done by different departments? We have a review committee on child death. Will a similar review committee be set up on elderly deaths so that we know what is going on? We have devoted a lot of resources and funding on this issue, but we keep hearing about tragedies. This is something that we don't want to see happening anymore. Will the government do more? Ms. Kwok's question is that in relation to elderly suicide, the government needs to do more. Of course, the government will do more. We want to reduce the number of elderly suicide cases. We have a dedicated topic on child deaths because it is not normal for a child to die So we want to know more. When it comes to the elderly, well, sometimes it is a natural cause. We will focus on elderly suicide cases. We have some basic data, but we will do more based on today's question. The DH, the HB, and our Bureau are working together. What hasn't been answered? Ms. Lillian Kwok. It's not a clear answer. I want to ask. So under the two-level, three-tiers mechanism, will you review the entire support network for mental health? In relation to this mechanism is a whole concept on mental health. We are running this mechanism on the community level. We have telephone hotlines. We use medical and social collaboration approach. We have 18111 mental health support hotline. At the same time, we make use of different departments, including the 20 NGOs providing suicide prevention services. We already have in place a referrals mechanism. On the first tier, if care teams or NGOs identify high-risk cases, they can refer these cases to the district elderly health centers. Starting from 2016, we have quotas to conduct assessments. If necessary, we'll refer these cases to the elderly suicide prevention services. We already have mechanism in place.
Question 4, Mr. Dominic Lee. It has been reported that the Dapeng Peninsula of Shenzhen, which is adjacent to Yanqiao of Hong Kong, possesses rich ecological resources, and both Shenzhen and Hong Kong have expressed intentions in recent years to strengthen cooperation in ecotourism and marine conservation. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1. of the details of cooperation projects started and cooperation agreements reached between the SAR government and the relevant government departments of Dapeng New District, Shenzhen, in terms of, among others, ecotourism, green economy, and marine conservation, whether it has compiled statistics on the specific data and effectiveness of such cooperation projects over the past 5 years. 2. Whether it has plans to promote cross-boundary ecotourism from Cat O and Tongpingqiao to the Dapeng Peninsula and devise related sea routes, including the construction of piers for co-location arrangements in such areas. If so, of the details and progress on the ongoing negotiations with Shenzhen authorities, including technical feasibility, estimated timetable, and related ancillary facilities, if not the reasons for that. And 3. Whether the government has assessed the expected benefits of the above cross-boundary ecotourism routes for Hong Kong's tourism industry and local economy, as well as the potential risks involved in environmental conservation. If so, of the assessment results and the policy directions determined in response to such results. Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism. President, according to the Northern Metropolis NM Action Agenda announced in 2023, the Blue and Green Recreation, Tourism and Conservation Circle, situated in the easternmost part of the NM, comprises Robin's Nest, Limahang, Shuttlecock, Yanqiao, as well as coastal villages in the outlying islands. With abundant blue and green resources, including country parks, marine parks and geopark, as well as a number of traditional rural townships, this zone has the potential for recreation and tourism development. As set out in the Development Blueprint for Hong Kong's Tourism Industry 2.0, the Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau, CSTB, promotes in-depth integration of Hong Kong's unique world-class resources with tourism and crafts tourism products and projects with distinctive features and strong appeal, with ecology plus tourism being one of the development tactics. On the premises of respecting the nature and protecting the environment, we will appropriately unveil Hong Kong's precious ecological resources to visitors and meanwhile minimize the potential environmental impact due to too many visitors as far as practicable, thereby balancing the needs for conservation and tourism development. The Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department AFCD, under the Environment and Ecology Bureau EEB, has designated places of high ecological value in Yanqiao as country park, marine park and geopark for conservation and eco-education and recreation purposes. In taking forward the above work, the wish of some local communities for maintaining a quiet countryside environment should also be considered. Having consulted the EEB, the Development Bureau, the Security Bureau, and the Transport and Logistics Bureau, a consolidated reply in response to the questions raised by Mr. Dominic Lee is as follows. 1. The Hong Kong SAR government has established mechanisms with the Shenzhen authorities for the cooperation in individual areas on ecological conservation and environmental protection following the establishment of the Robin's Nest Country Park last year. The AFCD and the Planning and Natural Resources Bureau of the Shenzhen municipality signed the cooperation agreement last year on the establishment of the ecological corridor between Shenzhen, Wutong Mountain, and Hong Kong's Robin Nest, including jointly removing invasive species, conducting ecological surveys, examining enhancement of animal corridors, and enhancing publicity and education. The Hong Kong UNESCO Global Geopark also worked with the Shenzhen Dapeng Peninsula National Geological Natural Park to hold science lectures and exhibitions in both locations last year and this year, enabling citizens of both sides to have a better understanding of the geological history, landforms, and geoparks of the two places. On marine conservation, the Environmental Protection Department and the EEB of Shenzhen Municipality have been improving sewage collection and treatment through the Mears Bay and Deep Bay Shenzhen Bay Areas Environmental Management Special Panel. With the concerted effort of both sides, the water quality of Mears Bay has been kept at a good level. It is conducive to the conservation of marine ecology, especially the hard corals in the northeast waters of Hong Kong. CSTB has been strengthening cooperation with the Shenzhen authorities in tourism aspect under the principle of mutual benefits, including encouraging the trade to design ecotourism products and itineraries on the premise of striking a balance between ecological conservation and tourism development. The travel trade of the Shenzhen and Hong Kong will also organize relevant fam trip, that is familiarization visits, to help with the promotion work. 2 and 3. Yan Chao Town in the northeastern part of Hong Kong possesses unique geological landscape, rich ecology, and village culture with a long history. The AFCD has established visitor centers, cultural trails, land tour routes, island hopping itineraries, and maritime tour routes with the different stakeholders in the local community to provide tourists with an in-depth green tour experience. In addition, the Countryside Conservation Office under the EEB is dedicated to revitalizing villages and held the Countryside Harvest Festival Kok Po Sound Sight Taste Fusion Tour at Kok Po in Sha Tau Kok from January to February this year. The event blended local natural ecology, historical architecture, and countryside culture for the public to experience the unique charm of our countryside. Through the working group for Sha Tau Kok Cooperation Zone set up under the Task Force for Collaboration on the Northern Metropolis Development Strategy under the Guangdong Hong Kong and Hong Kong Shenzhen Cooperation Mechanism, the CSTB worked with Shenzhen to promote tourism development in Sha Tau Kok and nearby areas, including Kat O, under the overall principle of low density, high quality, and through enriching its historical and cultural elements. CSTB has also been encouraging the business sector to develop diversified tourism products. At present, mainland visitors can conveniently enter Hong Kong through various BCPs to join local tours, including ecotourism itineraries in Hong Kong. Earlier on, with the Travel Industry Council of Hong Kong, the CSTB actively engaged with the trade in Hong Kong and Shenzhen. For example, the CSTB organized the Sha Tau Kok Island Hopping Fam Trip for the travel trade for Yantian district of Shenzhen last December. This included visits to Lai Chi Wo, Kat O, and Ap Chau, etc. for designing Sha Tau Kok Island hopping tours after crossing the boundary from the Liantang Hung Yun BCP. On the construction of piers for co-location arrangements for developing cross-boundary ferry routes between the eastern waters of Shenzhen and the NM area of Hong Kong. It will indeed involve a number of complex considerations as mentioned in Part 3 of the question. These include the long-term market demand for the ferry routes concerned and the carrying capacity of the region, the infrastructures required, the consequential change of planning, as well as the economic and cost-effectiveness of the infrastructure investment, the security challenges that will arise, and the potential impact on the ecological environment. They require long-term consideration by both sides of the governments. Thank you. Mr. Dominic Lee. Dapeng Peninsula and Yan Chao Tong are mentioned in the NM Action Agenda. How can the administration make sure this planning will dovetail into the plan of mainland China? Has the relevant task force considered how to take forward tourism development in this area? Regarding the Blue and Green Recreation Tourism and Conservation Circle, it is exactly one of the areas in the Northern Metropolis NM. In the NM, we need to develop new industries and new residential areas as well as commercial areas. We focus on the remaining 3 areas, a total of 3,000 hectares or so uncovered under the Blue and Green Recreation, Tourism and Conservation Circle. In this area, we focus on the development of tourism as well as itineraries. Just now, we mentioned a task force on collaboration on the Northern Metropolis Development Strategy. There is a working group for Child Health Cooperation Zone. It works with the Shenzhen counterpart on interfacing issues. Thank you, Professor William Wong. Thank you, President. In 2003, Shenzhen published a document on marine ecotourism. Dapang Peninsula resources were mentioned in this work report. Does the government have any plan to develop tourism in this regard? Secretary, as we mentioned, we do work with the Shenzhen side on marine conservation as well as the protection of marine resources. Oftentimes, there are new projects. This will depend on the planning and the intention of both sides of the government. We also work together to set the priorities. I'd like to see if the Environment and Ecology Bureau has anything else to add. Thank you, President. Undersecretary for Environment and Ecology. Thank you, President. The Guangdong and the Hong Kong side continue to work together. There is a strategy on the water quality of Mears Bay. Socioeconomic development, planning, pollution control, and sewage handling were covered in this work report. Measures were floated in order to tackle these areas. We have been working according to this work report. We have implemented some measures. As we mentioned in the main reply, when it comes to the water quality of Mears Bay, it's been kept at a good level. We will continue to take forward our work along this direction. Mr. Perry Yu. Thank you, President. In June 2022, Child Health Kok was opened in phases. At that time, the pier was opened. We wanted to develop tourism products in Kat O, Ngap Chau, and so on through water routes or sea routes. Mr. Dominic Lee asked this oral question with the theme of cross-boundary ecotourism. The highlight is cross-boundary. We want to be able to bring visitors to Chongying Street in a travel tour or in a travel group so that visitors will be able to enjoy the charm and the special appeal of Chongying Street. It's June 2025. It's been 3 years since. The Security Bureau has rolled out a lot of measures. Say there is a checkpoint station which has already been upgraded. There is contactless clearance. Mr. Perry, please ask your question. Thank you, President. I'm simply setting the backdrop. Well, a few bureaus representatives are with us. We now already have the infrastructures. Can you tell us what you're going to do to facilitate travel tours and visiting the area? Thank you. Which public officer will reply to this question? Thank you. Child Health Kok FC8, that is Frontier Closed Area, has been opened by phases. We will make sure security issues are cleared before we develop tourism. We also work with the Shenzhen side on tourism development when it comes to culture. We have been maintaining a close dialogue, but we need to reach an agreement in relation to priorities. I hope that we'll continue to explore how we can enable travel tours to go past Chongying Street as a travel tour. But of course, a lot of different complex considerations are involved. It takes time to solve these issues. Mr. Kwok Wai-kang, thank you, President. The mainland is looking into yacht tourism travel scheme. The traveling mode of yacht tourism was mentioned to facilitate high-end yachts to access different areas. A pier in mainland is about to be completed when it comes to its construction. Do we have sufficient infrastructures? We need to be able to catch up with these facilities, say Tongpeng Chau, Ap Chau. The facilities there aren't advanced enough. Yan Chao Tong has amazing landscape. There are amazing views. I'm afraid we cannot attract visitors to come. In a main reply, the administration said that it would plan in the long run with the Shenzhen side. I'd like to ask whether there is any timetable. Will we discuss it with the Shenzhen side in order to attract visitors at full steam? Thank you. Secretary. Thank you, President. There are a few pier improvement schemes. Some projects have been completed, some are being planned, and some are being constructed, or some are being implemented. As we mentioned in the main reply, we need to take into account investment into infrastructures. We need to factor in cost effectiveness, the long-term demand for ferry routes, the carrying capacity, security challenges, and so on. All these are factors at play. The handling of these issues will require a lot of resources of both sides of the government. Currently, we focus on developing the areas near shuttlecock, and we go by the principle of low density and high quality. We want to provide facilitation to high-end yachts to use these infrastructures. In this regard, we do need to continue with our dialogue with the Shenzhen side. We will continue to explore this issue. Thank you. Mr. Bill Tang. Tongpeng Chau is of great concern to me. Just now, Mr. Rislin Lau, Undersecretary, mentioned high-end yacht tourism. Dapang Peninsula of Shenzhen to Cut-O Pier, less than 4 km. We want to attract visitors to Tongpeng Chau, which has amazing views. But the pier at present doesn't have a good facility. An EIA was passed in 2020, and we have the pier improvement scheme or the pier enhancement scheme. I'm not sure if it hasn't been taken forward because of the fiscal deficit that we are facing right now. Can we at least have a canopy or a superstructure to install power generation facilities? Is it possible? Thank you. We are currently designing the relevant facilities, and we are also planning manpower. So at present, this project is still on the drawing board. Can we do anything to enhance experience of visitors as well as locals? We're willing to look into the situation. Thank you. Mr. Chu Kwok-kang. Thank you, President. As we understand, the mainland is looking into the development of yacht tourism individual free visit scheme so that they can access different BCPs into the waters of Hong Kong. I'd like to know whether the administration will take the opportunity of the Blue and Green Recreation Tourism and Conservation Circle to take forward yacht tourism. Thank you. The number of marinas is increasing. We want to attract more yachts to come to Hong Kong so that we can take forward the development of yachts in both Hong Kong and Guangdong. At present, we are providing a lot of facilitating services to help yachts to enter the waters of Hong Kong. Once they are inside the waters of Hong Kong, then they can join different island hopping tourism projects. When it comes to cross-boundary island hopping, this issue is much more complicated. We'll have to work with the Shenzhen side to explore possible arrangements. We also need to allay the concerns of different people. Thank you, Ms. Chen Yutming. Thank you, President. I thank the administration for mentioning the Robin's Nest Country Park and the ecological corridor. Tak Wu-ling, Shuttlecock are mentioned as well. There are mountains, there are waters, there are also urban landscape. Ngong Ping cable car is very popular in Hong Kong. Quite a lot of professionals said that country parks do have the conditions to be developed. I'd like to make a bold suggestion. Will the administration take the opportunity of cable cars to take forward the development of ecotourism so that we can give better play to the Robin's Nest Country Park? This will also help us have more landmarks in Hong Kong. Thank you. Secretary, thank you, Ms. Chen, for her suggestion. We do understand if we are to build large-scale infrastructures, say cable cars, we'll have to do a lot of preparatory work. We also need to conduct sufficient feasibility studies, and we have to look into the cost-effectiveness aspect. We will take into full account views of society. Thank you. Mr. Lai Tong Kwok. Just now, Mr. Dominic Lee asked about cross-boundary ecotourism routes. The administration said that it's quite complicated. As I understand, last century in the 80s, there was indeed a route. The route was connected to Ma Liu Shui, but then, because of lack of business, it wasn't continued. Have you talked to the Shenzhen side? Do they have any plans to take forward this project? What difficulties do they have? Let's not talk about what difficulties we are having right now. Secretary, the mainland government has been looking into the situation of visitor demand as well as the feasibility of different projects. We are looking into different projects and different proposals. We aren't focusing on island hopping tours in the east and in the north part. Rather, we're focusing on some areas, say in the urban area or in some public piers. These are our focuses. These suggestions are being looked into between the Hong Kong government and the Shenzhen government. We're looking into this. Thank you.
Question 5 is Eunice Yong. The earlier freshwater quality incident at Queen's Hill Estate and Shanghai Court, as well as the water mains burst incident in Tuen Mun, have aroused public concern about the condition of water mains. In this connection, would the government inform this council, 1, of the staff establishment and work details of the working group established in connection with the water quality incidents at Queen's Hill Estate and Shanghai Court, including the estimated number of times that the water tanks will be cleaned and the water quality will be tested, as well as the expenditures involved, whether the group will investigate if the incidents involved human negligence, of the total number of inquiries or requests received. 2, as the Water Supplies Department has indicated that it will replace all pipes in Hong Kong which are still coated with bitumen. Of the distribution of the pipes concerned in various districts in Hong Kong at present, the names of the housing estates or housing courts involved, as well as the timetable for the relevant pipe replacement work, whether it has plans to inspect the fresh water supply systems of all housing estates in Hong Kong to ascertain that they will not accumulate bitumen, resin or other impurities. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that, and the measures in place to prevent prevent similar incidents. And 3, whether it has plans to enhance the application of technology and AI to conduct 24-hour continuous monitoring and analysis of the conditions of water mains and water quality so as to identify abnormalities in water mains at an early stage and carry out repairs, if so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. Secretary for Development. President. My reply to the question is as follows. 1. The government is highly concerned about the identification of bitumen sediments in water at Queens Hill Estate as well as the Shanghai Court. Since the end of May, the Water Supplies Department as well as the Housing Department has formed a working group to conduct joint investigation and come up with measures. The working group is led by the Director of Water Supplies as well as the Deputy Director of Housing. The working group has 11 engineers and property management professionals who are responsible for the supply facilities in the district. The WSD has already cleaned the water tanks that it is responsible for managing and maintaining 11 times, and the Housing Department has cleaned the tanks for 6 times, as well as the pipes for 3 times. The Housing Department has also installed screening filters. There are in total 22 of them. The WSD has continued to conduct testing on the water samples, and so far the samples meet the Hong Kong drinking water standards. On the 7th of June, we set up a 24-hour hotline, and so far we've got 700 inquiries. The WSD has got over 1,500 requests from district councillors, the 3 district committees, as well as district care teams, which have set up street booths and they have been conducting household visits. The requests are in relation to the flushing of water meters. Within 1 to 2 days, the WSD has completed the flushing work, and so far, the majority of residents indicated that the water quality has improved. The WSD believes that the black sediments found are from the section of steel pipe with bitumen protective coating on the inner wall at upstream water supply network at Ping Chair Road, which is 400 meters long. They are remnants from the screen filters that were installed around the end of 2022. We've already invited members of the Drinking Water Safety Advisory Committee as well as 2 other members to form an expert group to help with the traceability work. The expert group finds the above assessment reasonable. We will learn from the experience. We will provide an investigation report. We are now working in full steam on dealing with the incident, and the expenses incurred, they are part of the expenditures of the relevant departments, and it's hard for us to give a breakdown. Currently, there are some places around the world that are still using water pipes with bitumen protective coating. Since 2005, the WSD has not adopted any pipes with bitumen coating. For water pipes that have bitumen coating, we have done an analysis on them. They account for 3.9% of the freshwater distribution mains in Hong Kong. They're about 230 kilometers long in total. The distribution of these water mains are listed out in the annex. The bitumen found is an inert material. It will not cause any harm to human bodies. However, there are remnants of this material in the water supplied to our citizens, and it has an impact on citizens' perception. We have already installed about 1,000 screen filters. We have considered the amount of bitumen that flaked off, as well as the complaint cases we received and the demographic structure. We think that the screen filters installed can effectively block the material from entering the inside surface of the building. The WSD is now reviewing whether there is a need to install extra screen filters. We have also advised the property management company on how the screen filters should be maintained. Over the past week, the WSD thought out of the box and it is exploring using temporary pipes in exposed locations. It is working with the Transport Department, the Police Force, as well as the North District Office to come up with relevant traffic arrangement. The site concerned sees busy traffic, and the construction site is narrow. However, with the concerted efforts of various parties, the WSD will kick off the construction work soon. It will work around the clock, and it is expected that the temporary pipes will be deployed by early July, meaning that starting from the beginning of this July, the steel pipes with bitumen coating will not be in use. The WSD is striving to have these new pipes replace the pipes in exposed locations. Last year, we got the funding from the Legislative Council to repair and rehabilitate some of the pipes with bitumen coating. And we are coming up with short and medium-term proposals to replace the aged water mains, and we will report the relevant details to the panel on development next month. We're also enhancing the water intelligence network to expand the monitoring area, as well as the district metering areas, which include freshwater trunk mains and freshwater distribution mains. We are speeding up with the work, and it is expected that the enhancement will be completed by 2027. The WSD will work with the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. This August, we will set up a joint lab for pipe robots, and we will study how we can conduct testing with high precision. In relation to monitoring water quality, we will set up 24-hour monitoring devices and systems. Also, every year the WSD does sampling checks, and all the sampling ratio as well as testing methods and the water parameters meet the international standards. And starting from 2023, the WSD has been studying how we can build more water quality monitoring stations in the coming few years. It is expected that the relevant study will be completed by the middle of this year. Thank you. Ms. Eunice Yung, we see that the government is being responsible. With this experience, we see that the government admits that it can make improvement in terms of its explanatory work. However, in terms of implementing smart water works, well, according to the major reply, there will be 24-hour online monitoring systems in important reservoirs as well as water treatment plants. However, in terms of implementing smart water works, there is a lack of a concrete timetable from the government. I see that the government has been working on installing screen filters. However, in Sai Kung Tuen Mun, the Eastern District, as well as in Sham Shui Po, we see an uneven number of screen filters. For shorter water pipes with bitumen coating, there might be more screen filters. However, there is an uneven distribution of screen filters. I'd like to ask about the implementation of smart water works. Is there a timetable? Will people have to wait for 5, 10, or 20 years to see a full implementation of smart water works? Secretary. To respond to Ms. Eunice Yung's question about the uneven distribution of screen filters, this is actually understandable. This is because we do not only look at the length of the water pipes. Instead, we look at how much material has been flaked off. We look at the risks as well as the demographic structure. In terms of the implementation of smart water works, last year the WSD set up an office to implement smart water works. This is to speed up the implementation of smart water works. For a period of time, well, in Hong Kong, in 80% of the areas where there are water pipes, we've already set up monitoring points. What the government has to do now is to expand the area where there are monitoring points. Also, technology has been developing rapidly.
These monitoring devices we installed, they do not offer real-time data. Now we want real-time data from these monitoring devices that could be sent to the WSD. So we have to expand the relevant area. And for areas where there are monitoring devices installed, we need to upgrade them. So we are working on this now. Just now it is mentioned that we will complete the expansion as well as the upgrading of the new generation monitoring devices by 2027. We will see whether this could be completed earlier. We might have to close off certain parts of the roads, but it doesn't matter. We will work with the relevant departments to see if this is feasible. Now, we don't want the monitoring points to be set up in water pipe networks only. We want to have this kind of monitoring point set up for all freshwater consumers. The WSD since 2018 has been asking newly completed buildings to have smart meters installed. Now, for buildings built before 2018, we want to have this kind of devices installed in them as well. This is a livelihood issue, so we need to install these devices for people, and it has to do with resource allocation. We'll work with the WSD on this. Thank you. Mr. Edward Lau. Thank you, President. We need to offer basic protection to our people in terms of the use of water. We've seen incidents in the Queen's Hill estate, and we are very worried about the incidents. There's been a high-level steering committee, and the CE has given 4 directives as well as 10 specific tasks. The Secretary has been working on this as well. According to the main reply, there was planned to upgrade the devices within this year, and according to the main reply, starting from this July, the pipes in question will be replaced. This is great. However, I am still told today that there are still black spots in the water. I think it has to do with the remnants or the residual substances. Apart from investigating the source of these black particles, will the expert group be able to assess how many residual substances are there in the water and how much time will have to be spent to completely clean the water tanks and water pipes so that the black particles will be gone? Secretary, we've got some complaints telling us that there are black spots accumulated in the water taps and faucets. Every time we get cases like these, we will ask the WSD to conduct a household visit and help tenants find out whether there are sediments or whether there are dirt accumulated in the water tap or faucets. We will submit a report to the Drinking Water Safety Advisory Committee. In the report, we will cover the cause of the incidents as well as the source of these black particles. We'll also explain how we've been cleaning the water tanks and what more we could do. We've already dispatched some water pipe robots to the water pipes with bitumen coating to carry out inspections. In the report that we are going to submit to the committee, we will set out the relevant details. Now, chairman of the expert groups as well as the other members have talked to us. After we've completed the cleaning of the water tanks and water pipes, we can deploy robots to the water pipes. We can also inspect the bottom of the water tanks to see if all the dirt has been removed. However, it's quite sticky, so we will continue to follow up on the matter after we've submitted the report. Mr. Kenneth Lau, within a week's time in Tuen Mun, we've got bursts of freshwater mains as well as saltwater mains, and near Shouhong Station, the water mains burst. And so over 7 hours of time, we saw water suspension in the Tuen Mun district, and it caused inconvenience to local residents. This is because there wasn't a backup water supply system. Will the administration, as soon as possible, set up a backup system? Will the government assess districts in Hong Kong where there is a lack of backup water supply system and accord priority in setting up these systems. Secretary. We've seen water main bursts as well as water pipe leakages. This is not what we want to see. If you look at past figures, we have installed sensors. Well, as mentioned, we're going to install extra devices as well as upgrade the sensors. However, according to figures, we can, based on the leakage rate, stop water main bursts from happening. So we've seen a lower number of water main bursts. However, the previous incidents did pose inconvenience to local residents. That's why I said we're working on the water intelligence network. And for old water pipes, well, while we have already reached a consensus, we want to minimize the inconvenience caused to local residents. So we've asked the WSD to come up with a short to medium term proposal to replace water pipes and to rehabilitate water pipes. And the Development Bureau will help review the proposals and allocate resources accordingly. Just now, the member mentioned about the situation in Tuen Mun, and Tuen Mun is definitely in our scope of review. Next month, we will report to the panel on development about the results of our review. Thank you. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. President. We have a freshwater supply network in Hong Kong. We have residential buildings and commercial buildings. We have a red line. We have to ensure that within the red line district, that is private residential buildings, we have to ensure that the water supply is clean. And for public housing estates, the housing department would follow up on the water quality. Now, for private residential buildings or commercial buildings, how would the government offer help and monitor the situation to ensure that the water supply network within the so-called red line is clean and that it offers water with high quality? Secretary, for private housing estates, in terms of the management of the water pipes and water tanks there, well, if you're talking about water quality monitoring, the WSD can enter these premises to collect samples. If you are referring to the management of water pipes and the maintenance and repair works of these water pipes, the WSD has been working on several fronts. We have relevant legislations. If necessary, the relevant parties or the WSD could give advice or prosecute the owners of the water pipes. We also have measures that offer incentives. We give guidelines to management companies and we tell them how they should clean and keep the inside service facilities. A few years ago, we had a freshwater safety action plan. For private housing estates, they may submit reports regularly to the administration, and the government would subsidize them on the cost of carrying out the maintenance works. We, however, see that the usage rate of this subsidy is not very high. So the WSD will have to step up its publicity efforts to housing estates as well as management companies through the recent incidents, including water main bursts as well as water main leakages. Well, from these incidents, or after these incidents, we do want to encourage them to make good use of the subsidy scheme. We see that the housing department, after the recent incident, has installed additional screen filters at the Queen's Hill estate. these screen filters can help block sediments from entering into water pipes. So the WSD will look at whether it is necessary to further publish guidelines for private housing estates as well as public housing estates and teach them whether there is a need to install additional screen filters. Thank you.
Last question seeking an oral reply. Mr. Gary Chen. Thank you, President. The number of imported workers approved under the Enhanced Supplementary Labor Scheme has exceeded 51,000 to date. Meanwhile, the latest unemployment rate announced by the government is 3.4%, the highest in 27 months. On safeguarding the employment priority for local workers, will the government inform this council? 1. As it is reported that some applicant enterprises set unreasonable criteria to exclude local applicants when conducting local recruitment under the scheme, of the number of complaints or reports involving irregular local recruitment procedures in the past 3 years, and among them, the number of substantiated cases and the relevant penalties, of the mechanism in place for proactively reviewing the reasonableness of such recruitment procedure or criteria. 2. As it is reported that since the scheme requires enterprises to maintain a manning ratio of imported labor to local labor of no less than 1 to 2, some enterprises have employed local workers to work part-time or arranged for imported workers to take up positions inconsistent with those they applied for, whether the government has looked into such situations. And 3. Of the number of illegal workers arrested in the past 3 years, together with a breakdown by the trade in which they were engaged, whether and has assessed if the existing penalties against employers of illegal workers and the intermediaries concerned have enough deterrent effect. Thank you, President. Secretary for Labor and Welfare. President, to cope with the challenges brought by manpower shortage, while ensuring employment priority for local workers, the government has enhanced the mechanism for importation of labor. Apart from launching sector-specific labor importation schemes for the construction sector, transport sector, and residential care homes for the elderly and those for persons with disabilities, the Labor Department, or LD, has implemented the Enhanced Supplementary Labor Scheme since the 4th of September 2023 to suspend the general exclusion of the 26 job categories as well as unskilled or low-skilled posts from labor importation under the previous Supplementary Labor Scheme for 2 years. Having consulted the Security Bureau, we give our reply to the members' question as follows. First, the LD has all along been rigorously processing each application under the ESLS. Applicant employers must undertake a 4-week local recruitment exercise and give priority to employing local suitable workers to fill the job vacancies. The LD reviews and ascertains the employment terms, including the entry and academic qualification requirements, monthly salary, and hours of work of all job vacancies posted by employers during the local recruitment. Employers taking on local job seekers through any recruitment channels during the local recruitment must offer them employment terms less favorable than those agreed by the LD. Upon completion of the local recruitment procedures, employers must report the results to the LD and submit recruitment advertisements for verification. The LD will contact each unsuccessful job seeker and assess whether the employers are genuine about hiring local workers. If there is evidence showing that an employer has violated the requirement of local recruitment or refused to employ qualified local job seekers without reasonable grounds, the LD will impose administrative sanction terminating the processing of the application submitted by the employer for importing labor and refusing to process other applications submitted by the employer in the following year. Since the ESLS was implemented, the LD has not found any employer who violated the requirements of local recruitment or received such complaints from job seekers. 2. To safeguard the employment prospects of local workers, the ESLS requires the relevant employers to meet the manning ratio requirement of 2 full-time local employees for every imported worker, or the 2-to-1 ratio on a continuous basis. Full-time employees refer to local employees who are directly employed by an employer and work no less than 35 hours per week for operating in the relevant businesses, excluding part-time staff, staff of subcontractors, or self-employed persons providing services to the employer. At the same time, the employer must not replace local workers in employ with the imported workers. If redundancy is warranted, imported workers should be laid off first. To ensure no replacement of local workers with imported workers, the LD has set up a dedicated hotline, 2150-6363. Employees who suspect that their dismissal is due to the employment of imported workers should call the hotline. The LD will follow up the complaint seriously. If the complaint is substantiated, the LD will impose administrative sanction on the employers concerned by, for example, withdrawing approvals for importation of labor previously granted and refusing to process other applications submitted by these employers in the following 2 years. Besides, imported workers under the ESLS must be reemployed under the standard employment contract prescribed by the government and must perform specified duties for the specified job at the specific workplaces under their contract. Labor inspectors of the LD inspect workplaces of imported workers under the ESLS from time to time to check whether employers comply with the employment ordinance and the requirements of the ESLS. The LD also requires employers to report information on full-time local employees and imported workers as well as the relevant manning ratios. If an employer breaches these requirements by, for example, failing to meet the manning ratio requirement or putting imported workers on duties other than those under the SEC, the LD will impose administrative sanction on this employer by, for example, withdrawing approvals for labor importation previously granted to this employer or refusing to process other applications submitted by the employer for up to 2 years. Engaging in illicit or illegal employment is a serious offense. Employers, illegal workers, as well as aiders and abettors of illegal employment will be liable to prosecution under the Immigration Ordinance. The IO stipulates different provisions targeting offenses committed by different groups of people. Visitors, illegal immigrants, overstayers are prohibited from taking up any employment, whether paid or unpaid, or establishing or joining any business. Aiders and abettors are liable to the same penalties. In addition, the government amended the IO in 2021 to increase the penalty on employers of illegal workers, with the maximum penalty massively increased from a fine of $350,000 and 3 years of imprisonment to a fine of $500,000 and 10 years of imprisonment, with a view to reflecting the gravity of such offenses. Besides, any person who takes up any employment, whether paid or unpaid, in breach of a condition of stay commits an offense. Upon conviction, this person is liable to a maximum fine of $50,000 and up to 2 years imprisonment. In addition, if local employment agencies or their related persons are convicted of breaches of the IO, the LD may consider revoking or refusing the renewal of license for such employment agencies. If the persons concerned apply for running other employment agencies in the future, the LD may also consider denying them the license. The government is committed to combating illegal employment with a view to combating job opportunities for local workforce. Relevant law enforcement agencies consider operational needs, assess risks, and weigh other factors as they flexibly deploy manpower for continuous intelligence-led operations. When necessary, they conduct joint operations to crack down hard on crimes related to illegal employment. The records of the Immigration Department show there were respectively 886, 1,304, and 1,268 illegal workers arrested each year from 2022 to 2024. 506 illegal workers were arrested from January to May 2025. The illegal workers arrested mainly engaged in work related to the catering, construction, cleaning, or retail and wholesale industries. Mr. Gary Chen. Thank you, President. I'm not sure if the Secretary is aware of this, but my party has been told that there are loopholes and abuse about the ESLS. There are sham part-timers when imported workers really take the jobs away from local workers, and then there are job descriptions inconsistent with the real job. Local workers lost their jobs because of that. Yesterday, the Labor Department announced 4 measures, and that points to the gravity of the problem. Otherwise, there would not have been such prompt action from the government. So now the LD proposes a special inspection campaign. I wonder how such special inspections can spot such cases of sham part-timers and also inconsistencies between job descriptions and the real job. We need regular inspections. Don't just take action only when a question comes your way. President, I thank the member for his question. The government takes priority for local workers very seriously. That's the first principle for our labor importation schemes. Jobs for our local workers first. We have a rigorous system for importing labor. In the community, there is talk of parallel contracts, sham part-time work. There's all kinds of work. But when we find that kind of problem, we impose administrative sanctions. For anyone who has come across such problems, please file a complaint, and we will follow up seriously. We have received 38 complaints so far. Not a huge number. We got trade unions to help. We asked people to refer complaints to us. In June, we received 22 complaints. And before June, we got 10 cases or so. Now, these complaints are on a real name basis, so we follow up seriously. We want to send a clear message. We have to be fair to everyone. Fairness for employers and employees. As we ensure jobs for local workers first, we also have to be mindful of our labor crunch. We have an aging population. We are short of workers. Because of that, when needed, we import labor to fill our labor gap. Mr. Edward Leung. For every imported worker you hire, one job is gone for a local worker. We have 71,000 imported workers here. For the companies hiring these workers, are they really struggling to hire? Now, for the F&B sector, retail sector, and the construction sectors, there are F&B workers having worked at the restaurant for 5 years lost their job because the imported workers took their job. So for whatever labor import schemes we're talking about, are we really filling the gaps, or are we replacing the local workers? You have put your question, Mr. Leung. Secretary. Our workforce is 3.8 million. Under the ESLS, we have approved importation of 60,000 workers. This morning I checked with my team again. There are only 25,000 imported workers in Hong Kong at this moment, so they make up less than 1% of our workforce. So we have just a small number of imported workers in the city. And there's a rigorous approval process for importation. That's how we ensure priority in employment for local workers. But there are industries struggling with chronic labor shortage, and that covers care workers for care homes and also dishwashers. Local people take little interest in such jobs. Now, for other jobs in retail and food and beverage, there may be renewed interest from local workers in such jobs. We have considered the situation because local requirement is needed before importing outside workers. When more local workers apply for such jobs, and because of this local recruitment requirement, there may be less of a need for imported workers. So we have to let the mechanism do its work. Mr. Kingsley Wong. The unemployment rate announced yesterday edged up to 3.5%, but for certain industries such as retail industry, we are seeing more than 5.7%. And for retail, the unemployment rate is at 4.9%. Yesterday, the LD announced a number of measures to ensure employment priority for local workers, and those measures have taken on board views from the trade union, such as strictly enforcing the 2-to-1 manning ratio. We need an effective cap on the number of imported workers in Hong Kong. Can we draw a red line for each sector? Say when the sector-specific unemployment rate reaches 5 or 6%, we should freeze the importation for that sector so that we protect the rights of local workers. Secretary, I thank Mr. Wong for his question. I talk to trade unionists every now and then. We talk about how we protect the employment priority of local workers as we import workers. Under the ESLS, there is a safeguard for jobs for local workers first, and that's the 4 weeks of local recruitment required. So here's how that works. when you see a change in the local employment situation, say it becomes harder to find a job, then there should be a greater willingness for local workers to take up work. So more people should come forward during the 4 weeks of local recruitment, and that should lead to a dwindling demand for imported workers. We will be watching the situation, but we should guard against one-size-fits-all measures. The situation varies from one sector to the next. For certain industries, no matter where the economy is at, they struggle with chronic labor shortage, such as for dishwashers and also care workers in care homes. But the situation may be different from other industries in retail and F&B. When there are more job seekers, then there should be more people applying for the jobs during the 4 weeks of local recruitment. So we will enhance our collaboration with trade unions. And on the website of the Labor Department, we will make it clear that a certain employer is looking to hire people and they're looking for imported labor, so they're doing the local recruitment. And those interested can apply for the job. Mr. Edward Lau. We understand the government has to strike a balance. We want enough workers. We also have to put our local workers first. So we have to guard against a one-size-fits-all approach. Timely review and adjustments are also needed. The DAB has been told about more people not being able to find a job. So now we have a new measure with a new complaint hotline. More publicity is needed so the workers are better aware of their rights. Yesterday, some new measures came out. So for workers trying to hire outside workers, they have to put out their name, the names of the companies. But let's go further. At the district level, some people complain about not being able to find a job. So can we have a matching service? Say a company looking to hire imported workers has to interview local workers. If they cannot find the right candidate, we can refer job seekers to them. Can the government set up such a matching service? Secretary. I thank Mr. Lau for offering to help. We are working on these lines. Now, the employers have to put out an ad. We also get our trade unions to help to spread the information so workers will be informed that a company is hiring and they can go for the interview. Now, if Mr. Lau from the DAB is willing to help, and we're happy to work with him. So when a job seeker comes along, the employer has to set up an interview. And we will call each unsuccessful job seeker to find out why, whether it's because the job seeker doesn't want the job or if it's because the employer has been making life difficult for the job seeker. So we will check. And if we realize that this employer is not really authentic or not genuine about hiring the worker, then that becomes a substantiated case. So for the 4 weeks of local recruitment, please refer job seekers to these hiring employers. If these employers are making life difficult for the job seekers, we will call these unsuccessful job seekers to check, and we will not grant those applications for imported labor. Mr. Chao Siu-chung. Now, for the F&B sector, the unemployment rate is 5.7%, and we're seeing an unemployment group of 13,000 workers. I got workers telling me that they lost their job because the companies hired imported labor, and they're struggling to switch to a different job. And for cooks, dishwashers, there are more than 25,000 imported laborers. And this number will exceed 50,000. So waiters, cooks, and dishwashers, how many are there in total? You are approving the importation of 50,000 imported workers. Isn't that too many? Will we set a cap on importing such workers? Will we pause the importation for a while? President, I struggle to tell how Mr. Chow arrived at the figure of 50,000 workers. Now, for junior cooks, it's 9,900. That's the approved figure. And for waiters, it's 6,900. So that's the preliminary figure we have. For dishwashers, roughly 4,000 such workers. So we have to act on fact. We go through the local recruitment and then we decide whether we grant that application for imported labor. A company may be granted a quota of 100 spots, but they may not use up every single spot. We have granted applications for 60,000 workers, but so far there are only 25,000 imported workers in Hong Kong. The figure is 25,000 imported workers. So let's stick to the fact. Of course, we also keep watching the situation, such as the situation in the catering industry. So we're extra alert when we process these applications. We will make sure there is local recruitment, and we want workers in the industry are aware of the local recruitment so that they can apply for those jobs. And we will act with care in granting the applications. We believe the mechanism will do its job. Say when there's a change in the local employment scene, when more job seekers come along, the need for imported workers should diminish. Mr. Dennis Leung. Thank you, President. The Secretary told us about the follow-up work on recruitment, but the employers have found a way to work around this. The FTU has received complaints. Job interviews happened, but employers are stringing the job seekers along without telling the job seekers no when they will be hired. The time may last 3 to 4 weeks. Now, the main reply says that taking up illegal work is a serious offense. We got complaints that employers are taking on people on business visas. Is this a loophole, or is the government oblivious to this, leading to no enforcement? Secretary, there are two kinds of workers in Hong Kong: legal workers, and that includes imported workers here through legal channels. And then there are illegal workers. For illegal ones, we enforce the law. An illegal worker here, whatever visa they come here on, we will enforce the law against them.
Government Bill. This Council resumes the second reading debate on the Employment Amendment Bill 2024.